Hey, deserving listeners, 90 Day Fiancé. Let's see what happens.
But you're absolutely right. This guy's got like an old soul or something, because he's giving me like actual advice that like my adult friends give me.
I forgot. She said that before. Something like that before. And there are books on enmeshment and parentification and kids growing up too soon. There are videos. I've made videos. Parentification, I've made a lot of episodes, audio episodes on parentification and enmeshment. And an old soul? No. I mean, some kids are, for sure, but there's so many things wrong with what she just said. Well, I don't know if it's wrong, but they are bright red flags for what I've been talking about. One, old soul, okay, it's obvious that it's a possibility that what she's actually observing is that she has forced him to grow up faster, and two, that she has not grown up, and so he has had to elevate himself to protect the family and him and her, and she has remained at this lower level of maturity, like that of a teen or a 21-year-old person or something. And so by comparison, yes, he does seem like an old soul. And then he gives me advice. How is he even in a position to give you advice about your dating? How does he know enough about that to comment on it? That tells us that he knows way too much about. Now, the Ronald situation, again, as I was saying earlier, best case scenario, he knew almost nothing about it. But he did know about it, and she thought that Ronald was the one. They were having a kid together. Now we saw, and I'm just being reminded that Daniel would witness them fighting and really horrific stuff, and there was no thought from Ronald or Tiffany to protect him from that. Anyway, and there's a lot of research on exposing kids to conflict. And again, people have all these things that they'll say. It's like, well, I heard that research shows that if you actually expose your kids to your conflict, it helps them to learn how to da-da-da. And if you hide it from them, da-da-da. Again, the key is the experience of the child, which seems totally obvious to me, right? It's sort of like roller coasters are good for children or they're bad for kids. No, it depends on the experience. If the kid is having a good time, then yeah, it's great. A little bit of fear, it's fine. But if the kid is absolutely terrified out of their mind and they're traumatized by the roller coaster, then that's bad. So what is the experience of the child? And that's where attunement comes in, where you notice the child's state, their emotional state, and you respond accordingly and caringly and holdingly, and you save them and protect them and are there for them and are listening to them and mirroring them and able to help them process and holding them emotionally,
And it's crazy coming from a 12-year-old boy. I thought me and Dad, when we got married, that it was going to be like forever. Everyone that gets married, they feel that way.
Yeah.
So I feel a little bit guilty.
It's okay, Mom. Just think next time.
Oof, damn.
Yeah. I think he's heading into resentment, anger, overfunctioning while she underfunctions. And sometimes this dynamic can even encourage her to be even more irresponsible because he is now becoming more like a dad, and she might transfer on to her son. I've seen this happen. And then she will rebel against her son because she thinks of him as dad, and she always wanted to rebel against her parents or authority or something. I don't know. But you hear that bite in his voice. Yeah. I mean, I don't know what I expected to see, right? I mean, a couple of years ago when we saw this, it was, fairly, well, not obvious, but there were a lot of signs. So yeah, what did I expect? I mean, no one ever goes to therapy on this show, or they rarely do, or they don't seem to use it very well. And so it's just going to get worse over time.
I definitely feel some guilt behind the separation with Ronald and I, because I feel like that forced Daniel to grow up. But I also know that it's not healthy to raise kids in a home where the parents are just staying together for the kids.
Yeah, it's another one of those rules that it depends. So it's not an ideal situation. Now, best case scenario, you date someone and vet them long enough before you decide to commit and force your children into a situation like that. But this notion that if the parents are staying together for the kids only, and they'd rather divorce, but they're staying together for the kids, it depends. So if you can manage as parents to not fight, especially in front of the kids, and you're not stressed out by living with your partner, even though you don't really want to be with them anymore, and thus you don't have stress that is eclipsing your ability as a couple to attune to your children, then there's a chance that that's actually the ideal rather than separating. Because the kid doesn't have to worry. Kids get affected by divorce in some pretty major ways. Even if you manage it pretty well, it can take a toll. That's why you want to be real careful before you head into that. It happens, though. Breakups happen. Divorces happen. Now, if you separate and you're still co-parenting a lot, and you transition well with the kids and reassure them we're here for you. No one's going to reject you, because that's what the kids are concerned about, age appropriate, right? They're very self-centered. And so you really want to make sure that they understand that just because we aren't in love anymore does not mean that we are not in love with you, and we will always love you. We will never divorce you. We will never do that to you. Neither one of us will do that. And so that's a big point. But anyway, so let's say that if you're deciding between, the way that Tiffany phrases it, it's just like, well, what was I supposed to do? Like, stay with Ronald when we're fighting all the time, and just stay together for the kids' sake? And I would say, well, no, but that's not your only choice. You have another choice, which is to go to long-term couple therapy. They did go to one session, right? But that didn't seem to work out with a therapist that can, and of course, Ronald would have to participate. I don't know, that whole marriage, there's some relationships on this show where I'm like, that's salvageable. Mike and Natalie, for example. I thought that was salvageable. But with Ronald and Tiffany, I don't know about that one. That one had a lot of issues. Ronald has a lot of issues. I think he's been through a lot, and he also, I think, has some pretty destructive urges, addictions, this kind of thing. There also seemed to be a lot of insecurity, like a deep insecurity for him, and a fair amount of sexism and misogyny that was sneaking out, and attitudes. But the way that she says it kind of makes it sound like she's trying to excuse herself or get rid of the shame that she might be feeling. What I would hope that she would say would be like, wow, if it's one thing I learned with the Ronald thing is I went too fast. I shouldn't be dating people in other countries because I have bigger things to do with my kids. Dating people from another country, it's massively disruptive because of all the reasons that it was. But also, if we ended up having to move to another country, I had to take my kids away from their family and their schools and their friends and their community. Like I can't do that to them. So if I can't find someone close by, then I'm just not going to find someone. That's just the way it's going. That's what you would hope a parent would say, honestly. Plus, I don't know where she lives, but I'm guessing there's a lot of people within driving distance of her house that she could date potentially. Anyway, what I would hope she say is, wow, I really put my kids through this really horrible situation because of that, and I need to make sure that doesn't happen again. But it's just not what we're hearing.
Think next time.
Damn. I definitely feel some guilt behind the separation with Ronald and I, because I feel like that forced Daniel to grow up. But oh,
right, I forgot she said that. She's claiming that the situation with Ronald forced him to grow up. He was already too grown up before Ronald even came along. We saw that. But I'm glad at least that she recognizes that he has grown up too fast.
Also know that it's not healthy to raise kids in a home where the parents are just staying together for the kids. So if I told you I went on a date, how would you feel?
I don't know. Are you dating?
You see it? See that fear in his eyes? Yeah. I mean, I'd be afraid. I'm afraid. I'm not even in this family. I mean, yeah, I'm afraid for Tiffany, but for the kids. Tiffany has not shown that she has a firm way of making those kinds of choices, right? And maybe she'll make a good choice, but anyway, so look at that fear in his eyes. So it's one thing when they on this show have adults doing things that are, hard to watch. Angela and Michael, for example. It's another thing when there's kids. And it's something when the kids are being shown on the TV show. I'll say it again. I've said it many times that even if he did sign on the dotted line saying it's okay to be on the show, do we really think that 12-year-olds know what they're getting into when they're signing a consent form to be on a TV show that is going to be forever? No, of course not. We understand that 12-year-olds don't know what they're getting into. And there's no reason to have them on the show.
They're just staying together for the kids. So, if I told you I went on a date, how would you feel?
I don't know. Are you dating?
I may have gone on a date.
Take it easy.
That smile. Any other circumstance, a friend, her parents, when she's talking to the producers of the show, great. You have a crush on someone. You want to smile. But did you not see his face, Tiffany? He was terrified. He's angry. He's hurting. And you're going, I might have gone on, I'm getting hostile and snarky and sarcastic and mocking. It's not good. Okay, so Tiffany, do we know about her childhood? There's a reason for this, right? And I don't know. I just wish that she had someone to help her
grow up. But I also know that it's not healthy to raise kids in a home where the parents are just staying together for the kids. So, if I told you I went on a date, how would you feel?
I don't know. Are you dating?
I may have gone on a date.
Take it easy. I want you to find someone that's obviously nice.
All right, so it's an obvious cue for Tiffany, mother of a child, a young, innocent, naive child that knows nothing about the world, even though he acts like it. And in comparison to Tiffany, I guess he does know a lot. And I don't mean that to put her down. I'm just saying that, anyway, point is that I would hope that she would notice in this moment that, oh, wow, he's hurting. He's suffering. And I need to switch gears here and just be like, hey, buddy, I hear in your voice that you're worried or you're upset about me dating, and you have every reason to be. And, let me reassure you, or let me hug you and apologize for what I put you through. Like something of attunement of his needs.
Yeah?
And that treats you good.
So sweet, puppy. I'm definitely not going to introduce anyone to you guys for a long time.
You get to know them first.
Mommy won't make the same mistake again.
Okay. That's exactly in line. It's in the direction. I mean, it's in the camp. I would hope that she would elaborate and repeat this and sort of generalize that to the whole approach, right? Instead of seeing him as an old soul, you'd see him as someone who has sacrificed their childhood for you. And that can be reversed somewhat. It can never reverse it because you can't go back to when he was 7 and give him a 7-year-old life because that ship has sailed. But so that's very encouraging that we saw that.
I promise, okay?
Okay. I feel like maybe I would like to help my mom with the person she wants to get with, and I would like to guide her maybe and tell her.
Yeah, I mean, you hear it, right? It's clear as day. I don't know if I've ever had behavior from a cast member on the show that is so quintessential something. Well, it's happened before, but that is quintessential. It's red flags all the way down. Parentification, enmeshment, codependency, meaning, true codependent personality where you're oriented to take care of other people. And there's different styles. There's 3 different types of codependency. There's control type where the codependent person will control the target, the underfunctioner. There's accommodating where you're just like, hey, let me help you with that. And then there's the chameleon type which is a rarer type and anecdotally, where the codependent will just become like the underfunctioner. So if a codependent and an alcoholic are together, the codependent will start drinking, for example, as a way of trying to make the drinker feel better about their life, that kind of thing. A controller will, criticize and you're a drunk. What's wrong with you? Very concerned with that. And then the accommodator will be like, hey, are you sure you want that other drink? Or maybe if we do this other thing, just really trying to dance around the issue and not trying to bother the underfunctioner. So he's starting to look more like a controlling type, honestly. I think when he was younger, he seemed more of the accommodating type, but I think now he might be transitioning with more rage and anger, justifiable resentment and frustration. So it's just so heartbreaking because it's one thing for people for the adults, like Darcy, for example. I mean, she entered this show with her relational traumas. I'm just going to take a guess. Tiffany, Natalie, they all did. Angela. They came to the show already with a lifetime of difficulty. They're continuing to experience difficulty, but in relation to their previous difficulty, it probably isn't that much additional difficulty, right? And they're full-fledged adults. They can make their own choices, right? But when you see a kid coming on the show and we're witnessing it as it's occurring, the parentification, the damage is happening, and it's going to affect him in all likelihood the rest of his life. He'll need 20 years of therapy minimum, I would guess, to get halfway there in terms of recovering and healing and going back. I mean, part of that therapy is giving him a chance to become 7 again, not like entirely, right? But allowing him to be taken care of truly by somebody. But yeah, it's just, this might be, it's one thing when Angela is abusing Michael. Michael seems like he can handle himself. I feel bad for him, really. I do. But Michael, I think, knows enough of the world. He has enough power that he can make his own choices for the most part, unless he's being completely gaslit, which I don't think he is. But when it comes to a kid, I mean, they're defenseless. These kids, completely defenseless. And then it makes you wonder how many other cast members with their kids, you think about Liz's kid. I mean, I don't want to accuse her of anything, but there's just wonder about, but we don't have to witness it. It's like, maybe it's happening, maybe it's not. I don't know. Let's hope for the best with that. But then when you see it happening, and again, I want to be clear. I don't know if I'm seeing anything accurately. It could be all faked. I could be wrong.
Anyone to you guys for a long time.
You get to know them first.
Mommy won't make the same mistake again. I promise, okay?
Okay. I feel like maybe I would like to help my mom with the person she wants to get with, and I would like to guide her maybe.
Now, I want to be clear. If you have a kid or you've seen a kid that said something like that, and it didn't have all the other signs that Danielle exhibits, there's nothing incredibly strange about a kid being like, you know what, I think I'd like to be a part of the decision-making process with my parent dating other people. That's not irrational. It's not strange. It's not necessarily an indication of parentification. But when we see all the other behavior and we've seen it over years and we hear that statement, it has so much more weight to it.
And tell her, if this person's best for her, this person's not best for her. I want her to just have a smile on her face at all times.
Dagger through the heart. Oh, I just want to see a smile on her face at all times. That is, I don't know if I'm seeing it right, but, or if they edited it and they knew that it would pack a punch, and there's all these other statements to counter what that looks like, but the way that it's edited, that was just a dagger. I mean, I want to rewind it because I want to make sure I'm seeing it the way that it felt the first time.
I feel like maybe I would like to help my mom with like the person she wants to get with, and I would like to guide her maybe and tell her, you know, if this person's best for her, this person's not best for her. I want her to just have a smile on her face at all times.
Oh, I just want to have her have a smile on her face at all times. So on the surface, and if you're Tiffany, you'd be like, oh, that's sweet. I think that comes from a place of terror. It comes from, I don't know, but a lot of signs are pointing towards that is not an altruistic statement. That is a survival statement. If she has a smile on her face, then she has enough resources to actually take care of me. Or it's my role to put a smile on her face because I am her companion. For many years, I was the only person that she confided in, that she depended on. I am her keeper. I am her therapist. I am her dad. I am her partner. And I'm tasked with taking care of her. What about me smiling? I don't know. I haven't had time to think about it, but I know that my purpose, this is where codependency takes root. And because you define your personality and your neurons all start to orient themselves in this direction. And when you're 35 and you're going through therapy, and I've worked with people like this, it's really hard to reorient yourself. I've had kids like him who grow up. I've even worked with kids like him, but often it's when they're older. They're more concerned about my feelings than their feelings. They're in therapy with me. I'm the therapist. And they'll even trick me into talking about me. And that's the countertransference, you know, because you know, I want to talk about me, right? Not when I'm a therapist. I know better, but there are subtle ways that codependent people of this type will, because of their anxiety, right? And I sense their anxiety, and I sense I can reduce their anxiety if I talk about myself. And I start making excuses, or I'm not really keeping my eye on the ball. And then I'm like, wait, how did we get here? No. Hey, like, or I would ask a question and be like, so when you ask that question of me, what's going on with you? Like, are you? And then I would hope that would lead down a road of awareness and discovery. And I could say, so you feel responsible for me, or you feel scared when you don't know stuff about me. Because there's another road to security, a more sure road, a more fundamental road, a more healthy road, which would probably be reorienting our relationship where they can just trust based on other data points that I care about them, I'm stable, I'm okay, I don't need them to take care of me. And my primary mission with them while they're in the room is that I am here to take care of them. And that might make you feel uncomfortable because of the codependent, it's not a comfortable place to be, but you're safe. If we focus on, because the codependent person, when they orient themselves toward themselves, or they're forced to orient towards themselves, they feel extreme fear because when they were younger and they did that naturally, bad things ended up happening, and they were like, oh, that's right, I'm supposed to monitor and control and make sure nothing bad happens. That's my role. So at 35, they start to turn to themselves, and they just have this terror because of the associations that they have with that. And so we want to help people, the pleasers of the world, the codependents of the world, to be able to relax and acclimate to, at the very least, not orienting towards other people. So it truly does break my heart. I just feel so bad. I hope he gets the therapy that he deserves.
I'm really glad we had this talk, puppy. I am just dating, going on a date here and there, once in a blue, whenever I have time. But my priority is you guys, you and Carly, and our home and everything, right?
Okay, good. There are some good things that are going on and some concerning things, and that's the good stuff. So I'd hope that she would be able to continue all along these lines and also live that lifestyle, actually follow through with that so that he just isn't exposed to chaos that would concern him.
Come give me a hug. I love you, puppy. I love you, honey.
Were you making
I
glasses?
was making them for you, yes. Moving forward, I am hopeful that Fabian could be the right guy for me, but I want to make sure that this is going to be something long-term before I even think about introducing him to the kids.
Yay. Yes. All right. There were 3 or 4 things that she said that I feel a lot less anxiety about. So that is reassuring in a big way. I mean, she seems pretty committed to that. Now, what does she mean by enough time, though? Because we'll hear that, and in their mind, it's like, well, I'm not going to introduce him on the first date, but maybe like the 4th, maybe the 3rd date, that kind of thing. I mean, I'm exaggerating a little bit, but what I would say is, typically you might need 2 or 3 years of dating, maybe with an engagement somewhere there in the middle, but you need a number of months to really know if the two of you are compatible and healthy together. Certainly there are examples of people getting married after just dating for a little bit of time. My brother married his wife after dating just for a few days, and they've been married for 27 years or something. So it can happen, but especially on the show, right? So what I would say to her is, what I hear when you say that is 2 to 3 years of dating before you can even evaluate if it's likely to be long-term, and thus likely that it's okay to introduce your children to that person. I bet you anything that's not what she means by that, though.
You ready?
Oh my God.
Now, I want to be clear, because some of you might have kids and might be considering dating or are dating and might introduce your kids to someone you're dating after, a few months or something. That's not unhealthy. But when you're in Tiffany's camp, which I don't know if I'm conceptualizing it accurately, but the way it looks, she would have to be extra careful, and she would have to kind of reverse the trend, right? And go cold turkey with Daniel so that he doesn't have any temptation to re-engage in the codependency.
Whoever it is that I date, I'm putting a lot on the line because it's not just me anymore. Let's clean this up.
Okay.
I mean, I hate to say this, but it was never just you from the beginning. She says that like it's new, right? It's like, well, it's not just me anymore. And I wonder if emotionally it feels that way to her because with the other kid, she doesn't feel that enmeshment with. And I mean, I don't know exactly what she's saying there, but I don't know. It just sounded that way, right? Like, well, now that I have Carly, my other child, now I need to make sure that I'm responsible. All right, well, that does it for that episode. Everyone out there, please take care of yourself because you deserve it. You really, really do.